Let's talk about Google Stadia.
Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. If you haven't already liked, followed, and subscribed to all the Geek Therapy Radio social media stuff, I would appreciate that consideration. It's just at Geek Therapy Radio. If you just search for Geek Therapy Radio and all that stuff on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff, Twitter, Geek Therapy Radio gets you there. It's with me, Johnny Hamburger. If you want to subscribe here on YouTube, if you're watching this segment on YouTube, I would very much appreciate that because I know you don't have to. All right, house cleaning aside, let's talk about Google Stadia. And I'll just say right off the bat here that we might talk about a few technical things in here as far as equipment they're using on Google's side to actually run the games. And I guess I should preface that by saying Google Stadia, in a nutshell, in a very loose nutshell, is kind of like Netflix for gaming. So if you think about all the popular entertainment formats, they usually start out based on physical media. That's no mystery about that. You know, with video, we had film and VHS tapes and even DVDs and Blu-rays and all sorts of things like that. But then you have something like YouTube and Netflix coming along where you can just stream the video. Some would argue that physical media is just dying, especially in the content consumption game. It's just dying. There's no reason why we should have there's no reason why we need a Blu-ray player right now when we can stream things in 4K off of services like Netflix and Hulu and various other outlets, Amazon Prime Video. So that's where video went. That's how we started to consume TV shows and movies, is that we streamed it. Before we did that, we were streaming audio. We used to have cassette tapes and CD players and reel-to-reels and turntables, and despite, yes, record players are coming back into vogue now. They have been for the past few years, but what I'm saying is the same. We've had these physical mediums that, as progress moves forward, we get away from needing the physical media. As soon as we could start downloading MP3s, we had MP3 players, and vice versa. As soon as we didn't need tapes or anything like that anymore, we could just have streaming services like Spotify, streaming services, even I would argue satellite radio streaming. I would argue that radio itself, what you're listening to right now, if you're actually listening to the AM broadcast of Geek Therapy Radio, this was the original kind of audio streaming. So it would make sense that an industry, a content consumption industry like video games, follows suit. And that's where Google Stadia steps in. Google Stadia isn't actually doing anything new, and it's set to launch sometime 2019. But what Google Stadia is it's game streaming like Netflix streams movies. Basically, you can have a catalog of games, and instead of having the physical copy on your end or even running the game on your own native hardware, that is, buying a big expensive gaming PC to run a game locally on your own hardware, you can run the game on Google's hardware, hundreds of miles away, and be able to play the game instantly on your end. That's the theory, at least, with all of that. And like I said, game streaming, like in that regard, is not a new thing. Nvidia's been doing this for years. I own every one of Nvidia's Shield products, and I really like them. The Nvidia Shield TV is the only Shield product that really stood out, even despite the Google Shield Portable and the Google Shield Tablet doing what the Shield TV does effectively. You can game stream using Nvidia's GeForce servers and all that kind of stuff. So you can play games like, let's say, Just Cause 3 or Rocket League. You can play them while Nvidia actually runs the game on your servers. It pumps out the video to your device, so to your tablet, and you do your input through your game controller, and it basically sends your inputs back over the internet to Nvidia servers to affect the action on your screen. So that leads me back to Google Stadia And I'll talk a little bit of specs on here, because really the argument I'm making, the specs don't hardly matter. All you need to know basically is that the graphics are run using AMD hardware. Now, this is very specialized hardware that they've built just for Google to run the games. And Google says that at launch they'll be able to run 4K games at 60 frames per second, which, okay, we'll see about that. I don't really doubt that aspect of it. We can talk about the resolution. We can talk about live streaming to YouTube and Twitch and all that kind of stuff. We can talk about the nitty-gritty details of how pretty the games look as you play it. But none of that matters if there is input lag. Google Stadia will not matter and will not be good, no matter how great it looks, if there is significant input lag. That's always been the problem with game streaming services, like what Nvidia's been doing for years now, has been, yes, it's been great for casual games, but an abomination for first-person shooters or competitive games. Let's say competitive games like Rocket League, competitive games like first-person shooters and Counter-Strike and all that kind of stuff, where lag is the enemy. We don't care how good the game looks. If it's laggy, it is garbage. It's a dumpster fire. So that is Google's main hurdle here, is you have to, that's great. A game streaming service, that is the future. We know that. That's wonderful. But if there's input lag beyond what we are already used to, let's say playing console to console or PC to PC over a hardwired, like a LAN party or something like that, the input lag needs to be negligible. And that's very hard to do when you are game streaming, when you're sending all the signals back and forth over the internet. Now, the Google Stadia controller that they've mentioned apparently has an option to connect to your Wi-Fi network directly. So it's sending the input from that controller over the Wi-Fi, over the internet directly, instead of through your computer or your cell phone or your tablet and then over the Wi-Fi. That should reduce lag a little bit, but that doesn't account for, in a thankful way, that other third-party controllers and keyboards and mice will work, Google says, with Google Stadia. That's great. But the controller will supposedly connect directly to the Wi-Fi, directly to your router, directly to Google servers. That should cut down on lag a little bit. So the name of the game here with Google Stadia, which we will yet to see, is input lag, input lag, input lag. If Google Stadia can figure that out, then they have a banger on their hands. Stick around for more Geek Therapy Radio. We'll be right back.